Awesome. Live? Okay, good. And they can see me.
Hi
Hi, everyone.
I'm Eric
I'm Eric
Gross,
Gross, the
co-founder of
co-founder
Academy. Hello to everyone on the interwebs.
Thank you very much for coming.
It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Oz Soleil. He is an Excel expert. He is a Microsoft MVP, most
valuable profession.
Absolutely.
The
Sports
sports
fans
fans
a lot
want to
of
do.
That's an elite status within Microsoft, and he's an expert trainer in Excel, and he likes to, how does he say it? Whoop, crap data. So he will talk to you today about what he does, how he does it, and how he empowers people, developers and non-technical people, to be able to use Excel and data analysis tools to improve their lives and the operations of their businesses. So please join me in helping. Join me in helping welcome Oz Soleil.
All right, thanks for inviting me here. Thanks for being here. I've been working with Excel for, go back to maybe 2001. Yeah. And it started when I was working in the call center, and my supervisor was complaining that I was answering too few calls. And my calls were too long. Too much time between calls. And I was thinking, okay, I'm working hard. Now I can tell them I'm working hard, and I'm just going to keep getting these notes. And so I figured I've got this thing called Excel on my desk. And what can I gather that can respond to them? And so I figured for a week, I'll document everything I do. The nature of the call, how long the call was, what I did between calls, everything. And when I loaded into Excel, after all those calls over all of the 5 days, I started to see categories and started to see, well, when they complain about these calls, they're thinking people want to sign up for classes, they want to order books, and I'm showing, wait a minute. That's like a quarter of my calls. I'm doing a whole lot of tech support, processing refunds, trying to find out, customer wants to know, I want to take the Series 7 course, and I want to take it with Diane. When is she teaching? Oh, that date, I don't know let me see. And so they call back. That was a lot that I was really dealing with. And once I had all of that data, and had these crappy graphs, because I really didn't know what I was doing with Excel all analysis. I just had some instinct. Oh.
Muted. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
All right. Yeah. Just click on that button right there.
Now you still have the camera. Okay. But we had 2 cameras going, so it's back to you. Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Thanks, man. All right.
Now that you had all that data.
Yep. So I had all the data, and I figured I've got to get it to somebody who will care and who will understand it and who could do something about it. And so I skipped over my supervisor, the director, and sent it to the CEO. And he cared. He and I had a couple of meetings. And soon after I had sent him that data, calls started getting rerouted different ways through the call center. The director was moved to a different position. Another director was moved in. And I saw, wow, data, power. I was not going to be able to just convince somebody by my sweat or my clothes being rumpled or how hard I'm working. No, when they saw that data, they listened. And the new director, he confided in me 10 years later that I was one of 3 people he was supposed to fire because of being ornery like that. But he saw it as an asset. Now, the other 2 people he did fire. They were doing things, being late and showing up drunk and whatnot. So, but I was giving a damn is what he saw that the other director didn't see. And so I wound up taking on a lot of different roles. He put me in charge of this one product that had a few clients that were tied to it, and they were tired of us. We were sending out some extra certificates. People who were expecting certificates didn't get their certificates. He said, Oz, you're our last shot. And I started looking. And when these people would call, I'd document what are they calling about, what's going on, what actions can I take. And it would lead to reports, bad reports, out-of-date reports, reports that happened when the business rules were much simpler. So you got to take these 4 courses, okay, in order to have your continuing education reported to your state. But then somebody later says, okay, after this date, in these states, this one course will be optional. But nobody updated the report. The person who had been told, you get this once a month, and here's your list of people to generate these certificates and send them out. And of course, the angry calls start coming in a week later, and they don't know why. But when I took it over, I started digging into what is this report saying? Why didn't these people get reported? And I'm asking the exam and grading department about why didn't they report the people? Well, it wasn't on their report to report these people. Okay, so now they're not getting reported and they're not getting their certificates. And yet it was because the reports were out of date. But they're digging into data. No person necessarily dropped the ball. It was the data was a mess. And finding that some people, they had as many as 8 profiles in the system. So when a person has to do 3 courses and 1 optional, and they've got 8 profiles in the system, and the courses are sprinkled through all those different profiles, okay, now I'm starting to see where things are unraveling. Yeah, it's a mess. And so I got to a point where I said, stop sending me this report. Each month, I will just get a raw-ass data dump and cleanse this data myself. And my director, the new director, he saw even more value, and he suggested that I apply for a commissions analyst job. And I said, you know, that's down in accounting, and they know Excel in a way that I don't. And he said, you know, I think you're the only one qualified to do this because of giving a damn. Because there were times where the numbers looked weird, and they needed somebody who would get up off their ass and go see, is this just the reality and they look funny, or do they look weird because something's wrong? And a lot of times there was something wrong, and it came back to outdated reports, reports that were triggered by one thing, but then there would be some weird situation that wouldn't trigger that measure. You know, like we had a product where it was decided you'll get this if you sell it or not. There's no percentage, right? So if you sell one, you get commissions. If it's returned, the commissions comes back. All right? So somebody starts questioning why his commission seemed low and his commission report looked funny. And his director came and said, Oz, I told him that these negative numbers were all returns, but I really don't know. Can you find out? So it took me a few days to find out. And what was happening is the report was being triggered by negative numbers. So here's a situation. Somebody sells this thing and they get the commission. And then somebody calls up and says, I paid $15 for overnight and it didn't come overnight. I want a refund for that $15. You see what's happening? That negative $15 was treated in the report like, well, take the commissions away. But no, they never got paid on that. They don't get paid on shipping and tax. So we had to build more transparency into the report, talk with the off-site consultant, the off-site expensive consultant, about building more transparency into the report. And we were able to get it straightened out, reconcile a bunch of back months for commissions that had been taken away from people unjustly. It all comes down to understanding reports are this poor approximation of reality and getting some sense of what does this mean. It's obvious, it can seem obvious that a negative number is a refund, but it was actually something else. And there was a time when there was a new product and the vice president of sales says, okay, here's the commission structure. And then all of a sudden, somebody's getting $5,000 in commissions. And he's wondering, okay, now this person is not that good of a salesperson to suddenly be from, say, maybe 600 or 1,000, get $5,000 this month. And other people's numbers were high. And he started to think about his cash flow and what about next month and next month and next month. He was not prepared for this. So we start digging into the numbers, find out. And then notice that the orders were clustered around certain dates. We wonder, why is customer service, are they holding on to sales before they load them into the system? What the hell is going on here? And then I figured, what if? Let me just put this data in a graph and stop just looking at numbers. And then it looked like this. Okay, and there was a national exam that was happening at those points. So what was happening, and it was quarterly, a quarterly national exam. So people would order books right before, and that's what was happening. And so he decided, okay, he negotiated with the sales team and asked, can we pay you quarterly instead of monthly? Because it would just be too hard on the cash flow to pay people monthly with this thing going up and down in ways that he had not planned for. And part of what I'm describing is like me as one person dealing with all these data and trying to solve all these problems. We had an IT team, an international IT team. And a lot of questions I get now as a freelancer is about, dealing with a client's problem. And they say, well, that should be in a database. Well, there's a learning curve with databases. And the data is somewhere else. It's not on this grid where you can see in Excel. But I would go to a business analyst, the database admin, and I would want certain data. I suspect that a report is messed up. Can I get the data another way? Well, maybe in 2 weeks, because I'm right in the middle of month end with the accountants, and then I'm going on vacation, and you and your small problem and your 500 customers across this whole international company, you can probably wait 2 weeks. Well, yeah, nobody's going to die, but I'm going to have to keep taking all these angry calls. Mm-hmm. So there's, like caring about people that have to live with the consequences of all of this, whether their commissions are wrong or their CE is not being reported. And taking the initiative as one guy who had Excel, right? Because it would have been nice if the database admin could have just done this for me. Just write his SQL queries, whatever he does, and just give me a clean report to look at, and then I just go back to doing my job. And that's just more insight into like who Excel users are, because people who do HTML, SQL, JavaScript, that tends to be their job. That's their profession. Excel users, we are something else. We are photographers and customer service reps and volunteer coordinators at nonprofits who have to deal with data and reports, and people who are good at social media, and then they get promoted to being some social media director. Now, instead of responding to tweets, they're analyzing data. They've got to get data. They got to understand it somehow. And Excel winds up being this easy access into it. And so I had several roles when I was at Kaplan, where I was a commissions analyst. And eventually I got this reputation for being able to get data. They didn't have to wait for Charles, the database admin, wait for him until tomorrow or next week or 2 weeks from now. Ours can get a raw data dump. And it won't be nice and neat and have the headers and subtotals like if it came from some real person, but at least it would be here and they could get an answer. And that was fun. That was exciting. It felt like a rogue. You know, and I've mentioned that a lot on my YouTube channel, is go rogue. You know, because a lot of times IT can't respond to us fast enough. We can get data dumps and do what we need to do. But there's another side to that sword, is that a lot of people aren't so savvy with data and understanding that if you're comparing two lists, you can't only look from this one to this one, but you also got to look from this one to this one to see really how closely they're compared and what are the stories when you see something weird, you know, something that you didn't expect to be there. So that's one thing I'd like to see more of in the future, is more talk about data literacy and not so much about tools, right? Because Excel is a tool, R is a tool, JavaScript, databases, they're all just tools in service of something. But the people have to understand data quality, data literacy, comparing lists. What is this report actually measuring versus what it's approximating, so we can do a good enough job with something like sending out certificates or measuring the maintenance on vehicles for a school. So lots of uses of data. So I want to show you a few things, and you all can ask questions if you need. You have any questions? Do you have any questions?
Not yet.
No, okay, all right, cool. All right, so here's one thing. I was in a hackathon, and I listened to a lady give this presentation. She was really proud of herself because she had copied all this data off of a web page, and it was in this big, tall stack. And in this example, okay, so in this example, we've got, say, J, his favorite color, and then a number, 4. So we would like to have this going across. We would like to have a list of names, a list of the favorite colors, and then the numbers in 3 separate columns, but they're all stacked up. And you can imagine like you'd have a first name, a last name, an email address, all stacked up. How do you unstack that? She spent 6 hours writing something in JavaScript to unstack it. And she got it, and she was excited to share that with people. But then I'm thinking, Excel has a tool that can do that. And so I just made this data up here. So we have this stacked up. So there's Jay, here's Ray, Gina, Rob. So I add an index column, and that's just going up here to add an index column, and then insert a modulo, pivot the column, do a fill up, because now we have J, but we need to get red to come up, and we need that 4 to come up. So we do a fill up, and now we need to filter the rows, right? Because now we have the records, J, Ray, Gina. So now we can get rid of anything here that says null. Filter the rows out. And we didn't need to take 6 hours of writing code to do it. Then get rid of that index column, and then we can rename the columns. And that gave me some insight, because that was soon after I had been laid off. So the company I worked for, they laid everybody off in 2008. And I decided not to go back to a regular job. Because here's the problem. I love solving problems. And once I solved it, now it's this routine sitting on my desk. No, I didn't want that. I had to figure out a challenge of, we keep getting these faxes about credit card disputes. What's going on here? So I dig and call the bank and find out what's going on, how many of these things are coming in, start to build a spreadsheet where I can monitor it. And so we have to respond to them by a certain time, right? So I would have it such that I could open this thing on Monday, and if there was something that I had to respond to within the next 3 days, it would be red. If within 7 days, it would be yellow. So I could just open it up and see how much red, how much yellow. Maybe it was just completely just all white, then that's fine. Close it up, leave it alone. But I hated that routine, solving the problem, trying to figure out what was going on with these certificates. That was a nice challenge. But once it became a routine process, I wanted to move on. And so that's why I've been freelancing since 2008. So I can show up and solve a problem and leave, move on to the next problem. So this, what I just showed you, is in a feature in Excel 2016 called Getting Transformed. Here, a guy in Amsterdam, he sent me this question. He said he's got all these card holders, and they're a loyalty program. Right. And then the transactions. 3 stores. Now, how can we break this down so that we can see who's not used the card, who's shopped at just one of the 3 stores, who's shopped at 2 of them, and who's shopped at 3. So we wind up with 8 categories that are represented here. So we can see 7 people shopped only at Wegmans, 13 haven't used it at all, 10 have been to all 3. And so I used a lot of joins. Familiar with joins? Yep. All right. So in Getting Transformed, there are joins. And those are a lot of fun to. It was hard to figure them out. Okay. So let's see. Where is that connection? So we've got the usage, and now it's broken down this way. So this is how I can see how many people have not used the card and who they are. And then this represents who's been to all 3 stores and what they've spent. Now, how do I dig that out? See the unused. Let's go to that query. So that just says, who has not used the data, used the card. Okay. So that is a left anti-join. So what's happening with anti-joins? No, not an anti-join. Okay. So let's say that you have, say, a building, and you've got, say, owners, and then you have residents. Okay, and you can have some people who are both owners and residents, and people who are residents and people who are owners, right? So an anti-join would find, say, who are just your owners who are not also residents. So we had an anti-join, a left anti-join in this case would get us Tina. But if we wanted to do a left outer join, that would get us both Tina and Ed, right? So, and in this case, we have our list of card holders and people who've made transactions. Who are card holders who have not made a transaction? So that was the anti-join that was done here. So we want to look now at who's been to all of the stores. So here's our source data, our usage. We do a pivot, and we do a filter. So because we want to know who's shopped at all 3 stores, we want to look at the people who do not have null as a transaction value. Because null would mean they haven't shopped there. Right. So we remove columns because we just want to know who the people are. So then we merge, expand column, group rows, and we wind up with the number of visits. And this is interesting because, see, this gets like into reporting, right? So like this person who's been to one, he's been to each store 1 time, but he's on the list with the people like Jody who's been to Publix 10 times. It's interesting to see that because yes, they're all lumped in together, but there could be a more interesting story down in there if you understand the data and what's being counted. Yep.
You mentioned using a pivot. What exactly is happening in that?
Okay. So what's going to happen? See, we've got Andy here twice, Russell once, Jody 3 times, and then we see Andy, Wegmans, Trader Joe's, Jody with all 3. And we've got a count here. So now a pivot is going to pick, I pick a column that I want to have as column headers. And so in this case, right, so now I want the stores up top and I want that data on the side consolidated, right? I don't want to see 3 Jodys. I want 1 Jody, right? And so, yeah. Yep. And so just reorder the columns, and then we know who has shopped at all 3 stores and how many visits they've made. And let's see, let's add somebody as a card holder. Say, diagram, just sit there, and then I'm going to go to refresh all. Everything glued in. Do it again. Now we see we got 14 unused because Maureen is just a card holder. She's not made any transactions. So we should see her. And there's Maureen. So everything is all integrated. This is why I think of Excel is a development platform. We can build things like that in Excel. So any questions about that?
You said you're using transform.
Getting transformed.
Getting transform.
Okay. So it's here on the data tab, and it's called Get and Transform. That group here. Right. In Excel 2010, 2013, on the Windows side, it's an add-in called Power Query that has to be downloaded at the Microsoft website. Yeah.
What about the current versions? Is it in cross-platform or just still Windows?
Just Windows. Yeah. So this was neat. These are all airport codes. Now, a lot of them in these 4 cells. So how can we turn it into a list? So there's the source data, and what it shows it as one long line. And then the step here is to split column by delimiter into rows. And so it did that. One step. Now it's all in one column.
Are there
Yep.
duplicates?
Hmm?
Are there duplicates?
If there are duplicates, they would be in the source.
Okay.
But
So
it didn't
that
create any
eliminates them?
duplicates. Huh?
That eliminates them. So if you had LAX 3 times, it would only appear once on this list.
No. If it's 3 times in the source data, it's going to be 3 times
Okay.
here. And then you can add a cleansing process
Okay.
to get rid of duplicates if you want.
Okay.
Is it associated with your original column, your original row identifier?
Is it so? Are
Like,
you asking
if
like
you
is
go
it,
back to the beginning,
Okay.
they have the left column is like a
Salesperson.
salesperson or
Oh.
destination. When you add those to a column, do you continue to associate them with that?
Yeah. 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 All right. Oh, this is a naughty niceometer I built. I was talking with Eric about this earlier. There's a friend asked me about, can Excel be used, does the common man use Excel? So I started thinking about what are some applications that aren't inventory or payroll. Okay, so a naughty niceometer. All right, so we got 2 kids, and it's calculating, it's Santa's 150 days till Christmas. Here's a picture of Santa and one of Krampus, because Hannah is at negative 106. And here is, right, yeah, exactly. So there's stop looking at me, right? So here is our lookup grid where we can change the scores, whatever we need to do. And so, go over here. Let's see. see that on the 10th of July, see Lisa do. Lisa told a lie. We use a drop down list. Okay, how many lies? One lie. Now watch the pictures. See it flip the Krampus.
Interesting. How fun.
Yeah. And so, what's happening with Hannah? Okay. I'm going to say, all right. I'll take this one back. All right. Let's delete that row. Now she's at -6. And let's take this. Oh. And this was just one lie, not two. Okay, now she's back with Santa.
Okay.
Right, so 0 and positive, that's Santa Claus. Last thing I'll show you. A friend was going to open a chiropractic clinic. And she's got the money that she was going to put in. And she was looking at where is she going to break even based on the number of visits and the price, the price of the sessions. And so I built this, and this is on a web page. So right now we're looking at, let's examine this from 55 to 400 visits, $30 to $110. Well, let's look at it from, say, 300. Okay, it says I've been timed out basically, but okay. I'm going to refresh. All right, so 300. All right, so now we can see that if $70, this is where she'd break even based on the $10,000. And then here it's saying it's going to take 146 visits.
That's just a break even.
Right. And so what if she decided, okay, let's do $18,000. Now it looks like that. Okay. And a neat thing about Excel, because somebody did get the math happening in JavaScript, but none of the validation. So here is something that's very easy to do in Excel. So what if we said we want to look 900 on the low end up to 300? That makes no sense, right? So it's saying stop this, knock it off. It makes no. All right. Or what if I say, -8 visits a month? No, stop it. So within a few hours, I was able to build this and get it on a web page with the validation and everything. And I've had clients who would have me do things like this, and they have a developer or a development team. And I've asked them, why have me build this in Excel when you have them? Because he does not talk JavaScript or PHP. He can talk to me in Excel and sit on the phone with me to help get the calculations right, and then turn it over to them to replicate. Because there was one complicated thing around people sign up for this and they pay so far ahead, but you got to prorate it based on when they signed up, and if they re-up their subscription versus if they don't. So many prorating, so many variables, and he was able to articulate that enough to me, and we were able to test it in about 2 hours to get it right. And then he turned it over to his developers to make a standalone app.
Why is the average number of visits a month relevant when you have visits already on the side? That has to do with down here.
think that's just specifying the range that that column is going to have.
Well, it's changing. See what? Right. Let's go to so we can see better. Okay. So it's changing it down here because this gives these numbers control the axis.
Okay.
Right. Right. But then we want to know how long is it going to take to get to this place.
Okay, rather than showing every single visit. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not an output.
It's not.
I thought maybe it was saying if, based on how you set this, you need to have this many average visits a month.
Oh no, it's not an output.
Okay.
Right. It's not an output. Right. This would be the output down here. It says it's going to take 4.9 months to break even. Yeah. So those are some demonstrations of things, and yeah. So any questions? Yep.
Where's the best source to learn some of this? I mean, I know Excel, but I don't know this.
Well,
TrainOregon.org. They have online training. You have to register through WebSource Oregon to have access to it. But you can learn Excel 2016 there. Or you can go to lynda.com, that's LYNDA,
Right.
and use your Multnomah County Library card, and it's both free.
And is that a good source for this kind of stuff?
okay. It that depends on a lot.
Yeah.
Because so this is my YouTube channel where a lot of it is Power Query.
Okay.
Yep, and showing different things that different clients have needed. Like somebody had me make a dynamic hyperlink recently.
Wow.
That was fascinating to do in Excel. Yeah, so a lot of it is real world, and oh man, I've heard from people who've taken like canned courses, and a lot of them have been disappointed. Like, okay, the second day of the course I learned keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah, see, I know all that. I want to get to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, right. So it's like going to YouTube, going to different forums like MrExcel.com.
Okay.
There's a really good forum there. Osgrid is another good forum. Lots of forums, private groups in, say, LinkedIn. I'm not a fan of LinkedIn, but the groups there can be really helpful. Yeah. That's one thing that is exciting about the Excel community is it is so big and people help each other out a lot. Yep.
Do you have time to maybe step us through a pivot action definition, like you were showing us in that example?
Now, how would you mean, like step you through? Because here we've got this data, right? We could put this into a pivot table. Are you familiar with a pivot table?
Not
Okay.
very much.
Okay, all right. Everybody familiar with pivot tables? He's pointing at you.
A little.
Okay.
I've studied it a little bit.
Okay, all right. So we've got these names here and the states, their years of residence. So what if we wanted to look at, say, by state? So what we could do is go with the cursor inside this data range, insert, pivot table, just put it on a new worksheet. Okay, let's close this. So now here's my field list. Now I can put state, let's put that into columns, the name in rows, and then the years of residence as values.
That's seconds.
Yeah.
So now we can see Deborah there, Kentucky. All right.
Aren't there ways too where you can have the states show by the number of units and sorted by highest first and lowest last?
So, if you wanted to, say, get the names out and then the state,
And then sort by number of years of residence.
sort largest to smallest.
Yep, yep, right there.
Yep. And then we could do the names and put that underneath state.
Perfect. So you can see if there's outliers skewing your number.
Yep. That's,
All right.
yeah, yeah.
Sweet.
The pivot tables. Pivot tables. Gotta know those.
And to
Yeah.
get to pivot table, you just go to the data tab and then where?
That was the insert tab. And then insert pivot table.
So, okay, so it's not even under data, okay.
Right. Yeah.
And if you keep it in the same document, does it just open in a new tab?
No, I selected, I left it at the default to go
Okay.
into a different tab.
Okay.
I could insert a pivot table and then tell it
Where that
to
is.
go right
Okay.
there.
And if the pivot, let's assume the pivot table can change based on changing inputs, can you have a report that comes out of that? That says, you know, like say you're doing salesman commissions and you've got it sorted by who sold the most.
Mm-hmm.
And every week I want to know who's on top.
Right?
Is there a way just to spit that out as a report, or would it be better just to ship the whole thing out as the pivot table so you can see where it's at?
No, there would be a lot of ways of doing that. You could set up a whole different workbook, a whole different file. You put it on a different tab and have those calculations happen somewhere else.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, what kind of data can you bring into Excel? Can you like just CSV format, or does it have to be changed in some way before Excel can use it? Or
Okay. Data. Get data. So here's a CSV, a text, XML, JSON. Point to a folder and
Oh,
import
wow.
that. Yeah. Databases. You can connect it to a database. Then there's your merges. Let's see. Even Facebook.
Facebook?
Yeah.
It says from Facebook right there. Import data from Facebook.
Yep.
That could be some of your, how many likes, or page
Yep.
visits.
Comments, all kinds of things. Yeah. Now there is a limitation. Say there's only like 1.08 million rows in a sheet. Okay, but Power Query, Getting Transformed, and Power Pivot, billions of rows to bring it in and do any kind of cleansing or anything that you need to do. It just can't be loaded onto a worksheet, right? So it'd have to be exported to somewhere else. But it can be brought in and these cleansing tools applied.
So the data has to be in a different source, and you're just basically operating this on that source.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Right.
Questions?
Macros?
Macros.
Ooh, good question.
What about them?
I hear that like that's like a desired like skill, Excel skill, but I've never really known if like when you use them or
Okay.
why you.
Macros, that's the reason why, say, in all these years, when somebody's asked me, is this possible for Excel to do? The answer has always been yes. They might not like the price tag, though, because, yeah, with VBA, then sky's the limit at that point. But it's, when there are some things that Excel, let me see, I'm trying to think of an example. Like recently, I had to build a spreadsheet and the client kept saying, this is for people who aren't data people. They don't know Excel. And so create a button that will open the search function. Okay, so they don't have to go to the home tab and all the way to the end and hit a drop down list. No. There's a button they push, it opens the search function. The dynamic list, that was part of VBA. Think of some other things. Keeping a workbook refreshed so that a person doesn't have to remember to refresh, that it can be coded so that it would automatically refresh at certain times. Pulling data in from different places. Sometimes a formula might just get crazy if you try to do it in a cell, and then some people might find it better to do that via VBA code.
Speaking of VBA code, do you know if Microsoft has any plans to implement functionality of writing macros in some other language?
Writing macro in Excel in another language?
Yeah.
There's been talk of making it work better with Python. I don't know where they're at with that.
So I know, like ArcGIS, they migrated all their scripting from VBA to Python.
So that I've heard talk about that. Yeah.
What's VBA?
It's Visual
Basic for applications.
Yeah.
Applications.
Right. So that you'll go to developer, macros, and then you wind up at the editor, and then you write code there.
It's the same for all Office applications. You can do it in Excel, you can do it in Word, PowerPoint, it's the same language. It's basically like writing a script. Basically, set of commands that allow you to do a task and avoid the manual process of click here, click there. I had when I worked for an insurance company, we would do transactions. The underwriters would get these error messages, and instead of having to go in through 25 clicks to do the error message and say, well, this is just a known error, don't worry about it, the household approved, and you were now insured. They push a button, once they see that error, they push a button, and it goes through all those clicks for them automatically. They don't have to, it's pre-made, it's text, it's commands, telling you exactly what to do. So that's what I'm looking for. Just code that basically does something that so you don't have to do it manually.
Right. And there was one time I had all of this data that I had broken out of a PDF. And you never know what that stuff is going to look like. And in this case, it put a whole bunch of text into, in a single cell, right? Like a business name, the address, the owner. It was all in this one cell for each record. And I just I could see the bold part is exactly what I want. But in native Excel, I can't get at that. I can get at that via VBA.
All right, well, thank you for coming, everyone.
Thank you.
So feel free to grab a couple pieces on the way out, and if you could, if you're new, if you could fill out a survey, it'd be greatly appreciated. Your feedback helps us having a better experience. We really appreciate Oz coming in and sharing about Excel and how he uses it. And if you get a chance, check out his YouTube channel. Learn a little more. It's a lot of similar concepts of programming that we right into Excel. Lots of different ways of solving problems. Just a different way to solve problems.
Yep, different tool. Yep.
What's the name of your channel? Sorry.
It's Excel on Fire. Yep. Thanks a lot.
Feel free to ask me questions too. I'm welcome to ask me questions.
Hi, I'm Bo. Good to meet you. I'm actually very interested in Danville myself. Actually trying to get in sometime in the near indefinite future to clean Vancouver.
Yes, I know there was a
Spreadsheets and databases, interject data systems. Can you